It appears as though Alex Pereira was meant to challenge Israel Adesanya for the middleweight title ever since he signed a contract with the UFC in 2021. With a background in kickboxing, nobody predicted he would rise to the top of the MMA ranks so soon. However, after devastatingly defeating Shawn Strickland in the first round at UFC 276, it became evident the division had a new championship contender. However, Alex Pereira's history goes back far further than his more recent accomplishments in mixed martial arts. This is the rise of Alex Pereira. Born in 1987 in Sao Paulo, Brazil, Alex Pereira's upbringing came in the favelas, specifically in São Bernardo do Campo, an area of real poverty. He's of indigenous descent, coming from an area of Brazil that is directly of European heritage. At the age of 12, Pereira dropped out of middle school to take on a job in a tire shop, ending his time in the education system. During this period, his dreams consisted of having the money necessary to purchase a car or a motorbike, a far cry from his eventual aspirations of becoming a professional fighter. In his teenage years, Alex Pereira began drinking heavily, becoming an alcoholic for a long period of time, for the vast majority of his young adult life, in fact. But a major breakthrough came when he decided to kick his addiction in 2009, taking up the art of kickboxing, which helped him focus on something that wasn't destroying his health. As it turned out, the 22-year-old Alex Pereira was actually quite good at fighting, earning his nickname Potent or Stonehand, due to his natural punching power. After discovering the benefits of an active lifestyle, his battle with alcoholism started to turn in his favor. But that doesn't mean it was as simple as flicking an off switch in his mind. For the opening years of his kickboxing career, Pereira still struggled with his vices, only breaking free from them completely when he realized that he had a lot of potential as a fighter, which would eventually lead him to true greatness in the ring. From this point onwards, he was a fighting machine whose talents in the ring were now truly blossoming into something special. Just 5 years into his kickboxing career, he managed to take home Glory Middleweight Gold, winning the promotion's tournament in 2014, putting his name on the map. Later that year, he took part in another Glory Middleweight tournament, this time losing in the opening round by unanimous decision. But in 2017, Pereira would really start to pick up steam, going 2-0 over his future rival Israel Adesanya before then winning the Glory Middleweight Championship, a belt he managed to defend 5 years later. Then he attempted to prove his pound-for-pound mettle by stepping up to the light heavyweight division, winning interim divisional gold before taking home the undisputed championship just a few months later. By this point, he was at the peak of his kickboxing career, a well-rounded striker with one of the best left hooks in the game. Not only had he built up an impressive kickboxing record, but he also became the first fighter to hold 2 belts simultaneously. His pair of victories over Israel Adesanya were nice wins to add to his resume, but the greatest accomplishments of his time in the ring would come afterwards. And by the time he left the sport in 2021, he was a pound-for-pound top 10 member, widely regarded as the finest middleweight and light heavyweight fighter on the planet. But kickboxing alone did not make up the entirety of his goals in combat sports. During his time in the ring, Pereira, like his great rival Israel Adesanya, had been taking a few fights in MMA here and there, testing his prowess in the cage while learning the skills he would need to round out his game. However, in order to be a mixed martial artist, it was clear that there was a lot of work to do. When he made his MMA debut, Pereira was already 28 years old and relatively unskilled in the many areas of MMA, which he would need to improve in order to succeed. And sure enough, the weak points in his game were found out, and in the 3rd round of his debut, he was taken down before being submitted with a rear naked choke. Despite the unfortunate setback, he was not dismayed, and instead he rallied, returning in 2016 with a pair of knockout wins in his home of Sao Paulo, Brazil, moving him to 2-1 as an MMA fighter. At this point, kickboxing would once again become the priority for him, and he would not make another walk to the cage for about 3.5 years. But when he did, it was clear that Pereira was becoming a different fighter entirely. Returning to LFA in late 2020, Pereira scored a first-round knockout, earning the attention of Dana White and the UFC in the process. During this time, Israel Adesanya, his old rival, had carved out a run of dominance in MMA, becoming the UFC middleweight champion and going undefeated in the division. And when the news came that the UFC were taking a chance on the 34-year-old kickboxer, it seemed like the promotion was hoping to feed him to the last stylebender at some point. But his first 2 UFC bouts were undoubtedly impressive, and showcased a guy who was very serious about fighting someone who was looking to round out his game and attempt to deal with the more diverse threats that the top middleweights would bring. After knocking out Andres Mihalidis in the 2nd round of his debut with a flying knee and putting in 3 solid rounds against Bruno Silva in his follow-up appearance, the UFC decided to take a gamble on Pereira he became a top 5 middleweight fighter. Time was clearly against Dana White and his team, and if they wanted to book a rematch between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya in the UFC, they would have to act fast. Shawn Strickland was chosen as his third UFC opponent, a major step up in competition, but also one that would potentially answer a lot of questions about Pereira's fighting style. Instead, Strickland chose to stand with the more experienced striker that stood before him. This, as it turned out, was not a great idea. It didn't take long for Pereira to figure out Shawn Strickland's rhythm, and once he did, he caught Strickland on the chin with a vicious left hand before finishing him off just seconds later, earning another highlight reel knockout. As the fight showed, Pereira has a clear striking advantage over the vast majority of middleweights. His timing, his traps, and his clean technique all seem to be on different levels. The longer you spend standing with him, the more time he has to figure out your game, and if you don't take him out of his element, there's a good chance that you're going to get finished. Following his impressive win, the UFC's experiment was paying off, and all of a sudden, a new contender had been established at 185 pounds, a fighter who had earned his place in the top 10 with a victory over a big name. Sure, a fight with Shawn Strickland was perhaps the best stylistic matchup that he could have gotten in the top 10, but either way, Pereira showed up on a pay-per-view main card and defeated a top middleweight in stunning fashion. As it turned out, the headliner on the same card was Israel Adesanya himself, and as he quite easily dealt with the challenge of Jared Cannonier, it became clear that there was an opening for a fresh challenge, and so the UFC 281 main event contest was born. It's a trilogy fight several years in the making, and one that will conclude a saga that has taken place across two different sports. Israel Adesanya will, of course, be the betting favorite going in, but Alex Pereira will probably have a mental edge heading into their third meeting. He might struggle with the Robert Whittakers and Marvin Vitteris of the division, but in there with Israel Adesanya, a pure striker like himself, it definitely evens the playing field. And if there's one thing we can say with confidence, it's that Israel Adesanya will probably come out with a less conservative approach this time around, especially with a guy like Alex Pereira standing across from him. And that will just about do it for this video. But who do you think will get their hand raised in the UFC 281 main event? Will it be the tried and tested middleweight champion Israel Adesanya who gets his revenge? Or will Alex Pereira go 3-0 over the last stylebender across two different sports? Luckily, we won't have to wait long to find it out. As Alex Pereira continues to rise in the world of combat sports, his journey serves as an inspiring testament to dedication, skill, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. From his early beginnings to his current status as a formidable force in the ring, Pereira's story is one of passion and perseverance. As always, if you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Apart from that, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.